Rabbi Zilgazin began the Farbrengen today that this is the first Shabbos after Hanukkah. Last Shabbos was Zois Hanukkah, and today is Shabbos Pashas Vayigash, which is the first Shabbos after Hanukkah. And he continued right away explaining that all the Shabbosim have a contact one to another. So therefore, if last Shabbos was Zois Hanukkah, and this Shabbos is the following Shabbos, so there is a contact between the two Shabbos, especially based on what the Medrash tells us, that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, He used Torah, as the expression in the Medrash is, as difterois upinkesois. The Torah was used as a blueprint from where He created the world. So Memela, everything that's created in this world has its source in Torah. So when we're talking about the Shabbosim and the contact between one Shabbos and the other, this is also based on Torah. Because again, everything in this world is taken and its source is from Torah. So the question arises, now that we have completed Hanukkah, and the lesson which Hanukkah gives us, that Hanukkah indicates how we are constantly supposed to be going higher and higher, just like we do Hanukkah. Each evening we add one more candle, one more light to the menorah. In fact, this in itself is also expressed in the title, the Yont of Hanukkah, because the word Hanukkah abbreviates Ches Neirois, Ches Nun Vav Chav Hei, Ches Neirois, and the Vav Vehalacha ki Beis Hillel, and the Halacha is like Beis Hillel, because in the Gemara we know there's a machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. What type of procedure should we light the Hanukkah candles? Whether we should light it, Beis Shammai claim that we light the Hanukkah candles 8 the first night, 7 the second night, until the last night we light only 1. Beis Hillel claims different, that we start off with 1, and by the time we're finished, when we're up to the 8th night, then we already light 8 candles. So Hanukkah abbreviates, the word in itself is an indication how we should do, that we should go according to Beis Hillel. The Rebbe explained, though we know in Torah, Elu va'elu divrei Elokim chayim, whenever we have a difference of opinion, both opinions are Torah, and as the Gemara uses the expression, Elu va'elu, both are divrei Elokim chayim, words of the Rebishter. However, when it comes to accepting the halacha of one, and in other words, we accept one opinion and we don't accept the other opinion. In other words, when it boils down to halacha, here we have, the Gemara tells us, v'havaye imoy, based on the pasuk, v'havaye imoy, v'Hashem imoy, the Gemara says, shahalacha kemoisei. If one is zeicha to have Hashem with him, that means he is zeicha that halacha should be like him. So when we're talking about both opinions, then it's a level of Elikim, Elu ve'elu, divrei Elikim chayim. However, when we're talking about the opinion which was chosen that is how the halacha should be, here we're already talking about the Shem Havaya, which, as we know how Chassidus stresses, how Shem Havaya is always higher than Shem Elikim. So Mamela, getting back to our union, we have just celebrated Hanukkah, and in Hanukkah, we take this lesson, how we constantly have to keep on going, Mailim B'Kodesh, that in all of Inyanim of Kedusha, we have to go higher and higher. Now that it comes Parshas Vayigash, the question arises, what lesson could we take from Vayigash, especially that we have already learned such an outstanding lesson, that we have to keep on going higher and higher, and this is what Hanukkah teaches us. So what is now Vayigash going to add on top of Hanukkah? Should we say that we should go yet higher than Hanukkah? So Al Pi Halacha, if one is to go and light an additional candle today, then this is contrary to Halacha. After we have lit the 8 candles of Hanukkah, we're not allowed to go ahead and light the 9th one and make a bracha on that. This we're not allowed to do. So the question arises, what is the lesson which we take from Parshas Vayigash? The Rebbe continued that the lesson from Parshas Vayigash will be the way Vayigash is explained in Pnimiyas HaTorah and Chassidus. And with a little introduction, which the Rebbe gave, that if we want to look for the Chassidish interpretation for Parshas Vayigash, we turn to the Chassidish Svar, which is the Torah Oyer from the Alter Rebbe. As the Rebbe stressed, Kishmoi Keinhu It is literally like the title. The title is Torah, Eira, Torah of illuminating Torah. This is what the contents of that sefer is. And this name was chosen by the Tzemach Tzedek. And if we want to go a step further, we have the teachings of the Mittler Rebbe and his sefer, which is called Torah's Chaim, which is how Torah already teaches us how to act in life, in our day-to-day life. And then we also have the sefer of the Tzemach Tzedek, which is called Oyer HaTorah. The Rebbe mentioned that the titles of Torah Oyer and Torah's Chaim, these titles were chosen by Rabbeim. However, that the Tzemach Tzedek's sefer should be called Oyer HaTorah, this title was not given by Rabbeim, but now, once this is the adapted name to this sefer, this is already the name of the sefer, and accepted by everyone that the name of the sefer of the Tzemach Tzedek is Oyer HaTorah. And they all, each one of them, explains in Pashas Vayigash. They explain at length that what is the inyan which is required from us to do now. The inyan that's required to do, the avodah from Yidden, is that Yidden should prepare themselves for the third Beis HaMikdash. And here the Rebbe elaborated on this for a lengthy time, and explained that all inyanim which we do, which we are doing now, has to be that with the intention that by doing all of these specific maisim, all of these specific deeds, we are bringing down the third Beis HaMikdash. The Rebbe compared it to what the Medrash says. The famous Medrash which the Rebbe always brings during the 3 weeks when he always talks about the importance of learning the halachas of Beis HaMikdash. That there's a famous Medrash that the Rabbeinu Shalom says that when Yidden are involved in learning in Yonim of Beis HaMikdash, they are credited as if they have built the Beis HaMikdash. Memela, when we are doing all of our avodah now, which we are to do now, and all of the inyanim which we are involved in, has to be with what intention? With the intention that by doing all of these inyanim, we are helping to build the third Beis HaMikdash. The Rebbe said this is not something which has a shaykhis only to specific people or to individual people. This has a shaykhis to each and every Yid. The Rebbe mentioned this has a shaykhis to those who consider themselves gera and babeva and kalte, in other words, cold people that don't identify themselves with any type of group. This inyan has a shaykhis to every single Yid. That the avodah that's demanded from us now is an avodah. Everything we have to do is with the intention of building the third Beis HaMikdash. Then the Rebbe began the next sikha. He says, obviously, people hear such words, language which was never spoken before, that we're saying that in Yonim, which we are doing today, has to be done because we are doing this because of the Beis HaMikdash. Obviously, this sounds very wild and something which is hard for people to digest. Here the Rebbe said there's something else which has been going on, that people make studies and write books and call conferences and congresses, and what is the issue which is discussed? What is the topic which is discussed? What should Yidden do? What is the right thing for Yidden to do? What is the proper thing for Yidden to do? Rebbe says there's no need for all this. We open a Tanakh, and a Tanakh is something which is accepted and honored and respected by everyone. Even non-Jews also respect the Tanakh. So when we open the Tanakh, we find the pasuk in Tanakh, which tells us, Am zu yatzarti. The Rabbeinu Shalom says, He has created this nation. Why? Li, for Himself. And then the pasuk goes on, Tehilasi yisaperu. Why did the Rebishter create Yidden? And what is the intention of creating Yidden? So that Yidden should relate the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tehilasi yisaperu. So Mamela the Rebbe says, when a Yid wants to know what to do, and a Yid is searching to know what he should do, there's no need in calling conferences, there's no need in writing books and calling conventions and meetings. The Rebbe says it's very, very obvious. We open a Tanakh, We open a Shulchan Aruch. We open a Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We can open the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch with its translation for those that don't understand it in its original text. And there we find very plain and simple, very obvious, specific, what we are to do. And that what a Yid is to do. And when we're talking about a Yid doing this, it means that all of his hanhagah, all of his attitude has to be fully dedicated to the Rabbeinu Shalom. Ani lo nivreisi elo lishamesh es koini, Chazal tell us, that every person is supposed to look at himself that he was created to serve his master. Memela, our whole goal of creation is to serve the Rabbeinu Shalom, lishamesh es koini, and serving the Rabbeinu Shalom to the fullest extent, to the fullest detail. The Rebbe mentioned just like a few examples. He says, when Shabbos will be over, we'll be making Havdalah. So when we make Havdalah, we have to be careful to make a bracha achroina after Havdalah. And then the Rebbe says there's a Jewish custom that after we make Havdalah, we put the Havdalah licht into poured out wine from Havdalah, and then we take this poured out wine from Havdalah, we put it close to our eyes, and we recite whatever is recited, which is a Yiddish custom to say something b'shas ma'aseh. The Rebbe did not mention what, but I just heard from people there is a minig by Yidden that when they put the leftover from Havdalah to the eyes, they say a pasuk, mitzvahs Hashem bara me'iras einayim. And then the Rebbe said after Havdalah we continue with Malav Malkeh. So when we continue with Malav Malkeh, we have to be careful that we wash accordingly as it's supposed to, that the kvort that we use is a kosher kvort. In other words, he explained the kvort which does not have any pegima, which means that does not have any chip on top, and we wash ourselves accordingly, and we use a hantach, a gashmistik, a towel accordingly. We do everything to its fullest detail as we are required to do al pi Shulchan Aruch. This is exactly what the Rabbeinu Shalom wants from us. And here we continue the importance of not only doing it ourselves, but also seeing and influencing others. And famous expression from the Baal Shem Tov, which the Baal Shem Tov expressed himself, that a neshama comes down onto this world and leapt up and lives for 70, 80 years. And what is the entire reason of the neshama coming down into this world? So that the neshama should do a favor with another Yid, to help another Yid. A neshama could be on this world for an entire lifetime. And what is the goal of the neshama? At one occasion to help a Yid. The Rebbe referred to a famous story from the Tzaddik, Talmidei HaBaal Shem, Tzaddikim Nistorim. Reb Mordechai, they were colleagues of the Baal Shem Tov, and the Rebbe spoke about the importance that a neshama comes down to this world to do a favor to a Yid. A favor could be considered teaching a little child how to make a bracha. This is also a favor. And when we teach a child how to make a bracha, here the Rebbe spoke how children daven, how children make a bracha. A child does it with fullest lebedikait, with the fullest sincerity. And here we could learn from children how to do it. Because when we do it as a routine, as a practice. We don't feel any enthusiasm in it. However, when a child makes a bracha and a child is explained what the contents of the bracha is, and that the bracha is being made to the Rabbeinu Shalom, who is the one that has created everything and has given him or her everything, and everything that the child has is from the Rabbeinu Shalom. And when the child hears all of this, and as a result of that, the child is being trained to make a bracha, the bracha which is being made by the little youngster is made with full of enthusiasm and warmth and inspiration. So Mamela, we can learn from children how to go about all this. And here in the same Sikha, the Rebbe was continuing that really we should be ready for go out of Golus already. And it's already a time that Bnei Shalom should take us out of Golus. We are 1900 years in Golus, and we shouldn't stay any longer in Golus. Ad Masai, how much longer should we be in Golus? And he said, the Bnei Shalom promised Avram Avinu that the Yidden would go out, Berechush Gadol, they'll go out of Golus with a lot of wealth. So some may say that we are still sitting in Golus because we are waiting for this wealth, for this enormous amount of wealth which HaKadosh Baruch Hu has pledged Avram Avinu that his children will leave Golus from. The Rebbe says, everybody is happy with what we have already, as long as that Mashiach should come and take us out of Golus. And regarding the wealth which Avram Avinu was promised, here the Rebbe kind of mentioned that wealth could also be not only in Gashmius, it could be spiritual wealth. He referred to a pasuk, Das Konisa, There's an inyan of purchasing wisdom. In other words, when we're talking about wealth, it could also be reflected in spiritual wealth. And the spiritual wealth, there is the spiritual wealth which we have, all these inyanim of Torah, of Pnimis HaTorah, the Ispanus Amanei, which we're being fed from and given to such tremendous giluyim of Pnimis HaTorah. Memela, Mashiach could come already, and the only thing and the only reason what's holding up for Mashiach's coming is that Yidden are not screaming enough and not begging enough that Rabbeinu Shalom should take us out of Galus ad Mosai. The Rebbe said that is why in benching we referred to Geula. Davening, if it's the Wochen, during the weekdays we say Semach David Avtecha Meira Satzmiach. Shabbos we don't say that, but we still say V'sech Zena Ineinu B'Shivcha L'Tziyim Barachamim. So really at all occasions we are begging the Rabbeinu Shalom to take us out of Galus. But how much we are begging, we have to beg yet more. And Yidden have to scream Ad Mosai. How much longer will we be in Galus? And when the Rabbeinu Shalom will hear Yidden screaming and begging that he should take us out of Galus, then the Rebbe still will respond to the request of Yidden and will take us out of Galus. And right after the Rebbe finished his Sichem, we all know what happened, that everybody began screaming spontaneously Ad Mosai. How much longer will we be in Galus? It was an unusual scene. Until it turned into a nigun and everybody was screaming Ad Mosai. How much longer will we be in Galus? The latter part of the Farbrengen, as usual, the Rebbe learns a Rashi in this week's Sedre, and also discusses an inyan in the Rambam, which has a shaykhis in the Shir of learning 3 Prakim a day of Rambam. As far as the Rashi, and the Rebbe again spoke today about the importance of learning Rashi and not those that look down to it and say it's not for an adult, for a mature person to get involved in details on Rashi, why Rashi says one word, or what Rashi should have said and does not say it, or all these type of diyukim and Rashi. It is not so. It is definitely for everybody, and not like those that think that this is only for children who are learning Chumash and so forth. When the brothers, Yehuda was complaining to Yosef why he's building up such a case with them. So in Pasuk Yutes at the beginning of the Sedra, so Yehuda says, Adoni Sha'al es avodav leimer, our master, referring to Yosef, asked his slaves, Hayesh lachem avei och, he asked us if we have any brothers. So Rashi says, Mitchila ba'alila basa aleinu, you came on us with a trick, with a bilbil. In other words, you did not approach us straight and honest, straightforward. Lama haya lacha lishel kol eila, why did you have to ask us all that? Bitchayinu mevakshim, did we ask for your daughter? Did we want to marry your daughter? Oyachiseinu ato mevakesh, or did you ask for our sister? Va'afal became, and still, v'noimer el adoni, we answered you. Lechichadnu mimcha dava, we didn't deny anything from you. So why now are we using all this information now against us? Yes, we should bring down another brother, and now we should leave him here. Yehuda was expressing a feeling of complaint to Yosef and Yosef's attitude. So the Rebbe is asking, first of all, like the child who's learning Chumash, actually what Rashi is really expressing here, Rashi is really expressing the approach of finding a shidduch. When people want to find the shidduch, this is how they take an interest. In other words, they want to know who's the brother, who's the sister, who's the immediate family. They investigate the family. Child who's learning Chumash, the Rebbe asks, is like kind of not familiar with the 5-year-old child, with the type of process which is used by looking for a shidduch. So why is Rashi getting involved in all of these details? Bechlau, do we want your daughter? Do you want our sister? Above that, strongest question is, Yosef had no daughter. They had no sister. So why they stop talking? Yosef had no daughter. This we know from the Pesuk. And they knew about it. Obviously, they came to Mitzrayim several times, and everybody knew that Yosef had 2 children. He had 2 sons, Ephraim and Menashe. So they knew that Yosef didn't have no daughters. Why are they getting involved and expressing themselves with such things which are not realistic? Then something else. What are they saying? Yosef is once their sister. They had no sisters. Obviously, Dinah was married. But besides Dinah, the Rebbe did mention, in the course of conversation, he mentioned that it's mentioned that when Yaakov had bonos, Yaakov had daughters. But the way we learned the psukim, we have accepted it that Yaakov had 12 sons. So, in other words, there's nothing going on about a shidduch now. Why are they bringing up the entire subject of a shidduch? Neither they're not ready to marry his sister. Yosef is not ready to marry his daughter. So why are they comparing it to that? Why are they mentioning that? So basically, what the Rebbe answered was, "Anochanam." This is what they said, being that it is not bitcha anu mavakshim. We don't want your daughter. In other words, it's not shayach for a shidduch. So why are you getting involved into all these details? Especially the Rebbe says the child who's learning Chumash has already learned the incident that has happened with Dinah and Shechem. Memela, the child is familiar that people do take an interest when it comes to make a shidduch, who the families are, what type of families are going to. But there we find the stress that they were looking, the Anshe Shechem were looking to live up to a standard that Yankov should be zach mishadach with them. So this type of an idea we find already in Chumash. So Mamela, the child is familiar with it. But what Yehuda is really saying here, there's no shidduch involved here. Not the pshat bitcha yinu mevakshim. If we're not asking for your daughter, you're not asking for our sister, and we know that's not shayach for a shidduch at all, because you have no daughter, we have no sister that's ready to get married, and that is why. Why are you leading into all these? Why are you expressing interest and questioning us on such details at the time it's not realistic? There's no way, it has no meaning here. Another inyan which the Rebbe also spoke about was the Rashi at the end of the Sedre. How Yaakov and his entire family have settled in Mitzrayim. There the pasuk uses the expression Vayeochzu ba, Vayeshiv Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen, that the Yidden have settled in the land of Mitzrayim, the area of Goshen. Vayeochzu ba, they held on to it. Vayifru vayirbu me'od, and they multiplied. Vayeochzu ba, so Rashi explains what does Vayeochzu ba mean. Lashon achuza. Achuza means when somebody has a field, when somebody has something and it's his, it's kind of like an inheritance. It's not necessarily meaning that he took it over from a previous generation. In other words, it really became his. So the Rebbe also raised the question, why is there a need for Rashi to explain what the Vayeochzu means? Especially that prior to this is the last pasuk. We already have the word Vayeochzu in Chumash, taki in this inyan, and Rashi does not explain it. And why, when it comes to this, normally if Rashi was to teach a word, he always does it the first time when it's mentioned in the pasuk. And here Rashi does not say it for the first time that it's mentioned, but he waits for the second time. Okay. Talking about all of these in Yonim, before the Rebbe got back to this Rashi, Rebbe spoke again about the importance of founding Batei Chabad. He says this is something which we've been talking about constantly, lately especially. So there are those that can ask a very simple question. On one hand, he's demanding of the opening of Batei Chabad. On the other hand, we say that we have to scream Ad Mosai, which means Mashiach is going to take us out of Golus right away. So why go through the bother of opening a Chabad house and put all the effort into it? At the time, Mashiach is right here, and we're waiting him momentarily. So why put in so much effort in opening a Chabad house at the time Mashiach could come any second, and especially we're expecting Mashiach so strongly? Rebbe said that there's an interpretation from the Frierdiker Rebbe, where the Frierdiker Rebbe explains that when the Yidden traveled in the Midbar, there were Memtes Masois, 49 journeys. And if we look carefully through the psukim, we will see that the Yidden camped at one of the areas, which is Kodesh Barnea. They were there for 18 or 19 years, which means that almost half of their time they were on one spot. The rest of the years, they traveled. On some spots, on some areas, they were longer. In some areas, they were not as long. Could be there were places where they were only for one day. And as the pasuk says, Al pi Hashem yachanu, v'al pi Hashem yiso. It was upon the instruction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu they would travel, and upon the instruction of HaKadosh Baruch Hu they would stop. What do we see from this? What we see from this, the Rebbe says, that a Yid has to do whatever he's demanded. If it's a question of being in the place one day, it's Al pi Hashem yachnu, v'al pi Hashem yiso. It's a question of being there longer. It's the same Al pi Hashem yachnu v'al pi Hashem yiso. It's a question of being get longer, like the Yidden were on Kadesh Barnea for the longest period of that 49 journeys which they made. It was also Al pi Hashem yachnu v'al pi Hashem yiso, and they had to open the Mishkan and fold the Mishkan. The Rebbe says opening and folding of the Mishkan was not an easy job. Moshe himself, and we know Moshe was tall 10 amos, and was strong, Chazal tell us, still Moshe was not capable of handling one of the boards of the Mishkan himself. The boards of the Mishkan were also high, 10 amos, and Moshe was not able to handle a board. They were high, they were tall, they were heavy, and it involved everybody to put together there was a lot of effort put in to putting up the Mishkan as well as taking apart the Mishkan. And still, whenever they were told from the Rabbeinu Shalom that they have to stop, the Yidden stopped. And when they stopped, they unfolded the Mishkan and erected it and put it up perfectly. They were told from the Rabbeinu Shalom that we have to travel again, so they again folded up the Mishkan, and with the same enthusiasm as if they would be one day on the spot. And when they're one day on the spot, it involved a lot of effort to unfold everything and then fold it back up again. And if they were longer on the area, it was a longer camping, they did it all with the same enthusiasm. Memela, when it comes to us, now when we're talking about the opening of the Batei Chabad, it also has to be done in the same way. It's not for us to make cheshbonos, to make calculations, how much longer are we going to be here until Mashiach comes. We're hoping for the coming of Mashiach immediately. But at the same time, we have to do what we are told to do. Then the Rebbe says there, those that think that the opening of Chabad houses is something which is for askonim, for people who are consider themselves activists, or those who are ashirim, wealthy, or tumlas, those that can make a lot of noise, they are capable of going ahead and founding a Chabad house. But when we're talking about each and every one of us, the Rebbe says it's not so. Each and every one of us can make a Chabad house. Whether it is a general Chabad house or a personal Chabad house. And as the Rebbe spoke when he spoke to the children, and repeated it again today, children, little youngsters, 4-year-old children, are also capable of making a Chabad house when their room has, the Rebbe spoke when he spoke to the children, has a tzedakah pushke, a siddur, and a chumash, and they feel that their room is a Chabad house. And the Rebbe says he's gotten letters from parents and from counselors, from youth group directors, that write him with a great enthusiasm that the children have set up Chabad houses. And children the Rebbe says, when a child does something, a child does it with a lot of excitement. And the children immediately displayed huge signs over their room that the room is a Chabad house. So that when anybody that comes into the house, and the Rebbe says not only a Yid, even a non-Jew that comes into the house immediately sees what's going on in the house. That this is a room, a house, where one excels in Torah, Tefillah, and Tzedakah. This is what a Chabad house is all about. Interesting, when the Rebbe mentioned davening, learning, and giving Tzedakah in the house, he said davening b'chas hashachar. Because Tefillah we're supposed to daven in shul. But brachas we could say at home. Brachas we say at home, but daven we're supposed to daven in shul. And the Rebbe said, spoke the big stress that when it is explained to a child, that a child knows that everything he or she has in the room, the closets and the cubbies and whatever is in the closets, and it's explained to Chassidus that a person needs to, for his house, to decorate a house, it's based on Chazal, it's explained it is needed mita, shulchan, kisei, u'menorah, a bed, a table, a chair, and a lamp. This is needed in order that we should be able to function the house properly. We need all of these things. And a child as well also has all of these things. So when a child, it is brought to his or her attention that all of the things he or she has in the room is given to her from the Rebishter. And this arises within the child a feeling, and the child goes ahead and is happy of the fact that his room is made for a Chabad house, and displays that his or her room is a Chabad house, and is excited all about it. And we can learn from children that we should take the same attitude. See to it that our own personal houses should be a living example of a Chabad house. Talking about the inyan of a house and how meaningful a house is, Rebbe said he will come up with another suggestion. Rebbe says there are some that say that every time he comes up with a suggestion, it is not just a suggestion, it is a decree, it is a gezerah. He said that with a smile. But he does have a suggestion which he would like to suggest. He says, it has been the practice that when guests come here, and then they go back to their respective places, they usually make Chassidish Farbrengens, as a Chassidish Farbrengen should be, and usually it is made in public places. Whether it's made in the local Chabad house, or it's made in a shul, or wherever many people have access to come. And it's made in the proper format like a Chassidish Farbrengen should be made, in the way of Gedoyla Legima Shemekareves. There's a Gemara. Gemara says that when there's a big power in drinking, that when people join together and drink together, it creates closeness among the participants. Mamela, this is the idea of a Chassidish Farbrengen. But what he would like to suggest is, besides it being done in such a way, that it should be done in the house of the person that comes back from here. When somebody comes back, and he comes back home, and he's going to relate from the siches, from the inyanim which were discussed here, and he's going to try to the best of his ability to be able to relate these inyanim. And if he himself, it is hard on him, he can't do it, then he will ask assistance from somebody else to help him. But take to go out and make a Chassidish Farbrengen, not only in the public place, but to make it in his personal house, and invite his friends and his associates, and have a Chassidish Farbrengen in his house. And this, the Rebbe says, is extremely meaningful. It's all along the same idea how every house could be turned into a Chabad house. Memela, take making Chassidish Farbrengens in the houses, and utilizing, channeling that through the house. If Farbrengen is made in Yidden here in Yonim and Teir, and in Yonim Chassidus, and in Yonim and Peil Mamish, this is a tremendous accomplishment in itself. Now getting back to the end of the Sedra. At the end of the Sedra, says we always keep on stressing how the parsha of the day, the parsha of the specific day, has a shaychus no lesson to the day which we are standing in. So Memela, based on Sheyurei Chitas, the parsha of today is the parsha of Shvi. What do we learn in Shvi? In Shvi we learn how Yaakov and his entire family have settled in Mitzrayim. So said today again, we are living in a Malchus Shel Chesed. We are living in a kingdom, a country where we are Baruch Hashem permitted to do whatever we want as far as observing Torah and fulfilling mitzvahs. Mamela, we have to derive a lesson just like Yosef. Yaakov and Yosef. Vayeshev Yisrael be'eretz Mitzrayim be'eretz Goshen. And Yaakov settled there, and he lived in a very peaceful and settled way. The Rebbe says the Torah uses here the expression Vayeshev. This reminds us on the same Vayeshev that's used at the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev. There, Torah says Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz Megurei Aviv. So what does Rashi comment? Bikesh Yaakov leishev b'shalva. Yaakov wanted to sit in peace, in ease, in comfort. Memela, what do we see is the whole inyan of Vayeshev. The whole inyan of Vayeshev is a comfortable type of setting. Memela, the same by us now. We are in Galus, and we know Taka we're in Galus. But still we have to live in such a way and act in such a way that we are here and we are accomplishing whatever we only could, and accomplishing everything to the fullest extent in the way of harchava. The Rebbe referred to what we read in earlier in Bereshis, by the be'eros, by the ditches which Yitzchak, we read that Avda Yitzchak created the ditches, and the Plishtim covered them, and then he was finally granted permission to do it. So there, it is brought that he created, they dug 3 ditches. It came to the third one, they referred to it as Rechoivos. The first 2 had different names. The third one had was named Rechoivos. So it's brought in Svarim that these three Be'erois, wells, which Yitzchak had dug, this has a shaykhs to the three Beis HaMikdash. The third Beis HaMikdash is called Rechoivos. What is the meaning of Rechoivos? Rechoivos is a meaning of broad, bright. This will be the Beis HaMikdash, which we will have, the Beis HaMikdash Ashlishi, because this will be a situation of such where we will no longer be in Golus. It will be an inyan of Hachave. We will not return into Golus anymore. It will be an eternal Geula, and the Beis HaMikdash remaining with us eternally. In order for us to prepare ourselves to this Geula, we now also are acting in a way of Hachave, in a way of Breitkeit. And while we are here in Golus, we are utilizing all the channels and all the efforts, whatever we could, to hasten the coming of Mashiach, and at the same time to reach out to anyone and everyone possible. And all of this is done in a set and comfortable way, and doing it in such a way, we have tremendous results and tremendous accomplishments. In the Shia Rambam of today, the Rebbe brought out something extremely interesting. We know in Gemara as well as in Rambam, when a case is portrayed, sometimes we say one sells to another, the other sells to the third, and so forth. Sometimes we find in Gemara, and particularly in Rambam, as the Rambam's Indian is halacha, and halacha always has to be explained in a very clear and precise way, that the Rambam is trying to explain it in the form of an example, so that we should understand it properly. How is it in the form of an example? The Rambam uses names. So, for example, today in Hilchos Te'eh V'Nitan, the Rambam uses names. Ruvain sold a field to Shimon. V'haya Levi me'edei hashtar. And Levi was one of the witnesses of this transaction. Later, Levi comes around and is denying this sale. Levi says that Ruvain stole this field from him. V'litin she'Ruvain gozel oisam imen. So the halacha is that we do not pay any attention to Levi. Why? Because if Levi was a witness on this transaction, he cannot, obviously, everything was fine and correct and proper. So he cannot turn around later and say that there was something wrong in this transaction where he himself was a witness. To such an extent that the Rambam goes even further, that if he wants to say that one side of the field, the north side or the south side, was not included, or shorter piece was not included, or a longer piece was not included, we do not pay attention to him whatsoever. One explanation is, though Levi could say that he was only an Eides, on the general sale he was a witness, but he did not get involved in the details of the sale as far as the north end of the field or the south end of the field, and now he found out additional information which he's submitting now, and that is why this should have effect on the sale. So the halacha is no. The halacha is that if Reuven sold a field to Shimon, Levi was a witness. If Levi is a witness on a field, that means he's a full witness on this deal, and he cannot come later and say that there's something wrong with this deal. The Rebbe mentioned last Shabbos, and along the same lines we explained today, that all in Yonim and Torah, we have the Inyan in Torah as it is in Gashmias, as we learn these halachas. Then we have, as he used the expression, Shenishtalshelu mehen, which means the original source in Ruchnias, where all these Inyanim originated from. Especially based on the Medrash, what the Medrash says on the Pasuk, Magi devarav liyakov, Chukov u'mishpatav liYisrael. So the Medrash says that the Rebishter, whatever he tells Yidden to do, he himself also does. He adheres to the same halachas. So how can we explain this halacha in the spiritual sense? Rebbe says on one hand, Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, these are the names of the Shvatim, foundation of Klal Yisrael. If we go a little bit deeper, we can explain it al pi pnimius. Reuven stems from the word re'iyah, to see. In other words, we know Hasidus stresses, based on what's stressed in Gemara and in Halacha, the highest evidence, the highest impact that something could have on a person is when he sees it himself. What is the inyan of re'iyah? A high level in Avodas Hashem. Reuven is in a very high madrege of serving the Rebishter, to the extent that we call him Reuven, he sees. Not only does he hear, but he sees. Re'iyah. Being that he's such a high madrege, he has an authority to make a transaction and sell something to Shimon. He's taking something out of one's ownership and giving it to somebody else's ownership. And he's giving it to Shimon. What does Shimon mean? Shimon is already a lower madrege. Shimon means shmiyah, to hear. If we were to explain it in different words, it is mashpiyah and mekabel. Reuven is the mashpiyah, Shimon is the mekabel. Reuven's madrege is re'iyah, Shimon's madrege is only shmiyah, to hear. The Rebbe goes a step further. Not only is Shimon lower than Reuven by the extent of shmiyah. If we remember in Chumash, when Leah named Shimon, she said, Shama Hashem, the Rebishter heard her, Kisnua anoichi, she is hated. She expressed herself that she was hated by Yaakov. And now the Rebishter blessed her with a child. So what does Shimon remind us? On somebody that was at a low madrege to such an extent that we can it reminds us of the concept of son. His Chas v'Shalom hated Rachmana litzlan. Then comes Levi. What is Levi? Levi means attachment. Just like we find how Leah expressed herself. When Levi was born, Hapam Yelave Ishi Elai. What do we mean here in the spiritual sense of attachment? Spiritual sense, attachment is meant being attached to the Rabbeinu Shalom. The one who we all are attached to is a witness on this transaction. What does that mean? Kodesh Baruch. So the halacha is, Reuven sold the field to Levi. To Shimon, And Levi is a witness. Then nobody can come later and break this deal. What does this mean? If the Rebbe says this means, it's explained in Chazal, that even the Rabbeinu Shalom, when he promises something, he cannot retract it. Only to do better. To worse, he can't. Memela. Reuven machar sadeh l'Shimon. That's going on between two Yidden. Reuven is in a higher madrege, Shimon is a lower madrege. And the Rabbeinu Shalom is the Eidus, the Rabbeinu Shalom is the witness. Then Levi, which reminds us on the Rabbeinu Shalom, Levi stemming from the word attachment. Levi, the Rabbeinu Shalom wants to do something kind of like to break the deal. The halacha is he can't. Because the Rabbeinu Shalom cannot do anything, cannot retract on anything which he witnessed, on anything which he promised to Yidden. He cannot retract on it unless he's going to give them better. L'toiva he could. To the contrary, he can't. Which this is the meaning, al pi pnimius, in the Indian of this Rambam of Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. The Rebbe also spoke in the Farbrengen about the Indian of simcha, of happiness. Serving the Rebishter with happiness. The Rebbe said that the Ramah, the author of the Ramah, the author of Shulchan Aruch Ramah, says there's an expression on the pasuk Uvnei Yisrael Yoitzim Biyad Ramah, which is the pasuk in Beshalach. Yidden went out of Mitzrayim with an outstretched arm. So the world relates Uvnei Yisrael Yoitzim Biyad Ramah. How do Yidden act? How do Yidden go around? Yidden go around acting according to the opinion of the Ramah, because he was the author of the Shulchan Aruch. So what are the opening words of the Shulchan Aruch? Shivisi Hashem lenegdi samit. That a Yid should always keep in mind that the Rebbe is in front of him. Tamid. What is constantly? What are the closing words of the Shulchan Aruch? The last halacha in Oirach Chaim. I explained Oirach Chaim, that's the Chelik Shulchan Aruch. But if we touch up what it means, it's the Oirach Chaim, the way of life, how a Yid should act. So what is a Yid told right away at the opening of the way of life? He's told, Shevisi Hashem lenegdi samit, that we have to know the Rabbeinu Shalom is constantly in front of us. What does the Ramah tell us at the conclusion of Oirach Chaim? What does he conclude with the Oirach Chaim? The last words of the Ramah are V'toiv leiv mishta tamid. The one who, the last siman there he discusses the halachas of Purim. He discusses the halachas of Purim and Shushan Purim. Purim and Shushan Purim and Purim Cotton, and then he concludes the Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, the good heart, Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, is always in a Mishta, is always in a Simcha, is always in a Suda. Rabbi says that our way of serving the Rebishter is to put these two Tamids together. that constantly know that the Rebbeinu Shalom is in front of us. And at the same time, we will constantly be serving the Rebbeinu out of simcha, out of joy. And by us acting so, this will lead to it that the Rebbeinu Shalom will bring us back, that we will have both Tamids. What do we mean by both Tamids? The Beis HaMikdash will be rebuilt, and we will have both Tamids, the Tamid Shel Shachan, the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim. So by us preparing ourselves with the Tamids, Shavisi Hashem L'Negdi Samid, and also Toiv Leiv Mishta Tamid, this is the proper preparation for getting the Beis HaMikdash Ashlishi, which the Rebbe mentioned, it's Oymedu Banu, it's already built by the Rebbeinu Shalom. The only thing the Rebbeinu Shalom has to let it down to us, reveal it to us, and there will be makriv the two tmidim a day, talking about this inyan of simcha in a very briefly. The Rebbe referred, it was like in counted words, the Rebbe referred to the inyan hasimcha, which has been going on, celebrating simcha, an outstanding simcha, which has been going on here the last couple of days. He said it in a very fast and indirect way. Zoltak Yezayin, that we should have the Don Notzach and have the Shnei Tmidim, the Meher of Yameinu, the Mashiach Tzidkenu.